affidavit appears on page 5.
Yes, I've got it.
It has already been admitted as Exhibit U27.1.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Yeah. Mr. Koko, the Commission is trying to, its endeavor is meant to achieve the truth about what transpired in matters that it is investigating. And we try the best to get to what is the truth. And in these matters of suspensions, we know that you have in your affidavit set out what you believe are the reasons why you were suspended. And last time we went through that exercise, also looking at the evidence that has been given by others and what the board itself has said. Now, you have in your testimony last time, just to recap, you have said that Ms. Tsulufelo Molefe's version is correct, and you were referring specifically to where she goes to Mr. Matuna and speaks with him about the suspension as appears from her affidavit. And he in response, according to Ms. Tsulufelo Molefe, she says, he also informed me that he had heard from outside sources that we were going to be suspended at the board meeting later that day. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Now, in your testimony, you were saying that Mr. Matuna said to her, I know about the suspensions, but there's a slight difference in what you are saying and what Ms. Tsulufelo Molefe says, in that Mr. Matuna, according to Ms. Tsulufelo Molefe, he says he also informed me that he had heard from outside sources that we were going to be suspended. Now, I'll come to Ms. Tsulufelo's version at the moment. Let's look at what you say is the knowledge you and Mr. Matuna had about your suspensions. So according to you, you knew from Mr. Matuna that the two of you will be suspended if you do not unsuspend, and I use that word which you use in your affidavit, unsuspend Mr. Sikasimbi. Correct?
That's correct.
You told the chairperson that you were not aware, you did not have prior knowledge of the suspension of the 4 executives.
That's correct, Chair.
I have looked at the transcript of your testimony at the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, comparing it to your affidavit. It seems quite clear that, according to you, the meeting of the 9th and the meeting of the 11th would have had to do with the suspension of you and Mr. Matuna as a result of you not complying with Mr. Tsotsi's instruction. Is that correct?
Chairperson, I have listened to the audios, and I can certainly say the meeting of the 9th did not discuss suspensions.
Yes.
But I can confirm to you that the meeting of the 11th certainly did.
Yes, but my question is...
I'm sorry, Mr. Solega, there was something I wanted to say while Mr. Berry was on his feet, which I forgot. I just want to...
Yes, sir.
Mr. Berry, I just want to confirm that I did read the letter that you handed up last time. You remember the letter that you handed up. I did read it. I did ask the legal team to ensure that they respond to the letter insofar as anything there relates to them. But it would help. I know that in the letter you talk, your client through the attorneys talks about various matters or things that he would like to be done or that he wished to be done, but he says have not been done, and so on and so on. It would help me a lot if there was a chance that a separate document would be prepared that gives, say, here is a clear list of the kind of things that we are asking for. Probably if one goes through the letter, it's just that it's not a short letter, it's quite lengthy, one can get them. But it would help if a document is sent to say, we are asking that, for example, with regard, you look at the audio in regard to that meeting with regard to this is what is relevant about it.
Yes.
You know, if one has that list, then one can then say, okay, this we have, this we don't have, or this we can do, maybe this we can't do. It makes it easier to see how much of that we are able to do and how much of that we are not able to do. If there is a chance that we could get something like that, that would be helpful.
Much of what was in the letter, well, the whole letter is confirmed in the affidavit.
Yes,
That the supplementary affidavit.
Yes,
and
yes.
more detail is given,
Yes.
particularly about the issues that we submit do fall within your
Yes.
terms of reference,
Yeah.
but have not apparently been
Yeah.
investigated
Yeah.
before
Yes.
you. So that is a major aspect of it.
Yes.
And, but I understand what you, is in other words, if we can point your investigators in the direction of where matters should be available, that could potentially support
Yes.
my client's version of events.
Yes, yes. No, if we could get that, but also it will help me, because then I can just look at the list and say, well, what about that? What about that? What about that?
Mr. Chairman, there's another thing that I must just issue, that I must just raise with you, and that is, in the previous proceedings, there were certain documents that were requested for my client. And to be perfectly frank, it was my responsibility, and I ran out of time. We will, insofar as possible, make those available to,
Yes,
to my
yes.
learned friends, but we
Yeah.
haven't yet.
Okay.
And we apologize for that.
Okay,
It's
no, that's
really, we
fine.
just, I
that-
barely
that's
made
fine.
it here at 4 o'clock.
Yes, yes. No, that's fine. Certainly, we may, certain things might not happen or might not be done at a certain time, but as far as I know, there is no reason to say we are not doing it because we pursue a certain narrative. In 2018, there is a clear letter or memo that I sent to the head of the legal team and the head of the investigation team. And that memo, among other things, said the investigation team and the legal team must make sure that they follow evidence. It doesn't matter who it leads to. No matter what his position was before, what his position is now, what his position is likely to be in the future, if the evidence leads to that person, they must do that, and nobody must be spared. There is a specific memo that says that. So,
We are gratified to learn of that. Thank you, sir.
okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Selega, I interrupted you.
That's not a problem, Chair. Should I proceed, Chair? Thank you. Mr. Koko, my question stems from, because it's a different question. It's not whether or not there was discussions about the suspensions in the meetings of the 9th and the 11th. It's about what you say was going to happen in those meetings. According to the way you narrate the issues, you gave the understanding that that was your understanding that Mr. Matuna says you were going to be
That's correct.
suspended. Yeah. But you know that Mr. Matuna has denied your version from his affidavit. You've seen that he says, he didn't say to you that if you do not unsuspend Mr. Kasimbi, Mr. Tsotsi is going to suspend you and him. You've seen his denial.
I have seen Mr. Matuna's affidavit, and I'm shocked that he denies that.
Now, and you have also admitted that you didn't raise the issue of Kasimbi with the board at the time of your suspension.
I did not raise the issue with the board, that's correct, Chair. When I was suspended on the 11th of March,
Yes.
the earliest opportunity I got to meet the board after the 11th of March, I certainly did, and I did so sharply.
It is clear from the minister's affidavit, Minister Brown, that she was also aware of the Sumitomo matter. I read a paragraph from her affidavit, you remember that? And she said an executive from Eskom came in person to tell her about the issue. You remember that?
I remember that, Chair.
And you have listened to the audio recordings, you've looked at the minutes of the meeting. It is apparent from both the audio and the minutes that the minister came to the board on the 11th of March, around 11 or 11:30, had a meeting with the board, but never raised the issue of Sumitomo with the board.
Chairman, the meeting of where the minister was is not recorded, and I've not seen the minutes, so I don't know what the minister raised.
Yeah, I heard you earlier saying you've listened to the audios. I think you do say in your affidavit, in fact, that the issue, even here you said 5 minutes ago, the issue of the suspensions was definitely raised in the meeting of the 11th. So you can't be definite unless you know what took place in that meeting.
Chairman, there is no audio recordings, nor the minutes of the meeting of the 11th where the minister was.
Yes, to the extent that he may have said that, Mr. Slega, he might have meant it was raised during the meeting of the 11th, not
Yes.
when the minister was there, but maybe the one that came after.
Yes.
But of course, that can be checked with him.
I have listened to the audio of the meeting after the minister left. I've read the minutes of the meeting after the minister left. The meeting of the board with the minister was not recorded, no minutes taken. So I do not know what the minister raised with the board.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
but what I was saying was something different, because you have made that point.
Yes.
What I was saying is, to the extent that you may have said, as Mr. Selegas was saying, you may have said that issue was raised during the meeting of the board on the 11th. You may have meant during the meeting of the board after the minister had left.
Oh, certainly,
Yeah,
certainly.
but I was saying he could check with you whether that's what you meant.
Certainly, that's what I meant, Chair.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Koko, I think you are right that it was established before the commission, at least insofar as evidence is laid, that the audio record, the meeting with the minister was apparently not audio recorded. I think you are correct in that regard. That's what hasn't been done here. You follow? You follow?
Yeah?
But we do have the minutes of that meeting in the file. The evidence here doesn't show that the minister raised the Sumitomo matter with the board. In fact, the minister comes there, Dr. Ngubani testified, is in his affidavit. Mr. Koza was here recently, it's also in his affidavit, that the minister, when she arrived there, raised 4 areas of concern to the board. And that area included your area. And said the 4 executives should step aside. It would be better if they step aside so that they do not hinder the inquiry that the minister wanted to have undertaken. So that's the evidence before the commission. You have any comment?
Chair, the part that I recollect is that the minister raised areas that she needed investigated, and there were 4 areas. I also recall the evidence in this commission that says the minister did not instruct that executives in those 4 areas be suspended. She left it to the board. That's the part that I remember.
Well, I must just check whether you had evidence that said she did not instruct, or whether you had evidence that she said at the time, I cannot instruct the board, whether, or both. Which one did you hear?
I had evidence here that the minister says she cannot instruct the board to suspend.
Yes. Did you hear evidence this week of Mr. Koza, who said the minister, I think he said something like, wanted us to read between the lines. And I asked him whether he could say that by implication the minister was instructing, and he said yes, by implication. Did you hear that?
No, I missed it.
Yeah.
When Mr. Koza was testifying, I was
busy
with the council putting together the affidavit.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. But certainly there's been a lot of evidence to the effect that the minister made it clear that she could not instruct the board. And then, of course, what each member of the board would make of what she said is another matter, but that line was there.
Yeah, Chair, I can't comment on what the minister told the board, except what I just heard here.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, Dr. Ngubane, Chair, you will recall, he says after the minister left, it was absolutely clear to them that the minister wanted the inquiry and the minister wanted the executives to be suspended.
Yes.
That's the one thing. We also asked Mr. Koza the same question, whether it was clear to you after the minister left that that's what she wanted, and he also confirmed.
Yeah, okay.
So Sumitomo, Mr. Koko, was not raised with the board.
I think what Mr. Koko has been emphasizing whenever you have raised that question
Yes, Chair.
is that he didn't raise it on the 11th,
Yes, Chair.
but he raised it later on.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, so
At the first earliest opportunity, sir.
Yeah.
When I realized that the story that the board told me was a ruse, when they told me that the board has information in their possession that points to sabotage in the area of my business. Now, once somebody, if you come to a meeting prepared and the board comes to you and say, you know what, we have evidence that your area of business is actually committing sabotage on a national installation, which is treason, that disarms you. You immediately, it does not matter whether you wanted to, whatever you wanted to tell. The board, the respectable board says, we have the evidence. We have the evidence that your area is sabotaging the country by causing load shedding. That disarms you completely.
okay, continue, Mr. Seleka.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Koko, that obviously should be contrasted with your attitude, which you talked about when, at the time of Dr. Ngubane's board, they sought to suspend you, and you say you told the board, if you suspend me, you will be protecting corruption and I will go to the police immediately. You remember that?
Yes.
So, and that also should be compared with your attitude that you went at length with the board to tell them that, but you are suspending the person who is not responsible for maintenance. You mentioned those two gentlemen.
Yes, Mr. Cavender and Mr. Ntsokolo.
That's right. Now, let's then look at what you say in your affidavit in regard to your suspension. Please turn to page 45. Eskom Bundle 15, P45, Chairperson.
What page?
45. You there, Chairperson?
Yes, I found it.
Thank you. Mr. Koko, you're also there.
I am there.
So just to put it in context, you talk about the Denton's report and Ms. Suzanne Daniels, who doesn't have the report, says the report is destroyed, and you question her why. She can't produce this report. And this is at the time of the Denton's giving its investigation and report to the board. Paragraph 154. Mr. Koko, you write, remember, the board at the time, now at the time that would have been June, July 2015, or even in March 2015, was acting on instructions from government to get rid of me. Why would the board have suppressed information that would have served its purpose 100%? In addition, why would the board then in October 2015 appoint me as Group Executive Generation and Technology, implying confidence in my abilities, competence and integrity? It's unthinkable that the board would put me in charge of the whole of Eskom's power generation assets if such allegations had been made. It would have been a very serious dereliction of duty on the part. But what is intriguing here, Mr. Koko, is that first sentence, that the board at the time was acting on instructions from government to get rid of you. That cancels everything about Mr. Tsotsi seeking to suspend you because of Sumitomo.
No, Chair.
Comment?
This is, I'm playing back to the Commission. I'm saying if Mr. Tsotsi's version is right, that he was directed by the President of the former President of the Republic, together with Ms. Mieni, why, when the opportunity arises through Denton, after interviewing witnesses who can vouch for my corrupt activity, the government and the board would take that opportunity to say, here is now real evidence we can work on to get rid of Mr. Koko. Because witnesses that have been talked to by Denton, we hear from Ms. Daniels, brought in damning criminal evidence to Denton. Now, if the government, in terms of what Mr. Tsotsi's version is all about, is correct, there would have been, it would have been a clinical finish. Mr. Koko, here the evidence, here's the evidence, here are the witnesses, step aside. But I am simply saying that's it's a dereliction of duty for the board that has got before it information from Denton that says I have acted corruptly and there are witnesses to support that. Instead, they bring me back, but that information of Denton's does not find its way through the final report. And I respect Dentons. I think if Dentons is aware of criminal activities, whatever instructions, they are professionals, that information should find its way through the final report. So I don't buy the story that the documents were destroyed. Even if they were destroyed, Denton, as professionals, will stand by the report and say, you've asked us to do this, but we've come across this information. It did not find its way there. They bring me back, allegedly, to cooperate with other so-called agents of state capture to do what the transactions are doing. And on top of that, in October, they promote me. Does not make sense.
What is telling in that paragraph, Mr. Koko, is that it doesn't bear what you've just explained.
But this is what it means.
That is, if Mr. Tsotsi's version is correct, that is not there. In fact, the opposite is true in your statement. Let me finish. You urge the reader to remember. You add the word remember that at the time of Denton's investigation, the board at the time was acting on instructions from government to get rid of me.
Of course, at the time.
Can I finish?
Let him finish, Mr. Koko.
That statement is unqualified. There's no qualification to the statement. You understand what I mean?
I understand what you mean. But Chair, I am here to talk to my affidavit. And I will talk to my affidavit. And I will not feel less to talk to what I meant. I wrote this. Remember, this commission was told that it is government, through the former president, who directed our suspension. Remember that. This is what this paragraph says. So,
Just before you proceed, Mr. Koko, don't forget the points you want to make. Mr. Selega, do you know whether prior to paragraph 154, Mr. Tsotsi in this affidavit has indicated what he believed the reason for his suspension was?
Yes, Chair.
Where do we find that?
You find that from paragraph 19 onwards. 79. I'll give you the page reference, Chairperson.
Paragraph 79.
79.
Okay.
That's on page 26.
Okay. I just want to...
Chair, I should warn you, that reason spans 15 pages of that document.
Well, I just want to quickly, 26, you said.
Page 26, the first paragraph on page 26, which is 79.
In effect, does he say that he believed that it was Mr. Tsotsi?
Chairperson is unequivocal.
I'm sorry.
Chair, I'm a bit lost now. What document are we referring to?
We are on Mr. Koko's affidavit. I have asked whether prior to paragraph 154 of Mr. Koko's affidavit, which is the paragraph on which Mr. Selega is asking him, whether you follow now.
I was under the impression that you were referring to what Mr. Selega said, but I must be mistaken. I'm sorry.
No. So, Mr. Selega, in those paragraphs,
Yes,
does Mr. Koko say he believes that he was suspended because of Mr. Tsotsi?
Correct.
Chair, can I take you to paragraph 114 on page 35?
Page 35.
Page?
Yes, 114.
Page 35.
This was all a ruse. Mr. Tsotsi wanted to get rid of me because I suspended Mr. Sikasimbe. Yes. Okay, all right. I wanted... I think, Mr. Selega, you are free to pursue the line you pursue, and Mr. Koko will explain or defend what he said the way he wants.
Yes, Chair.
But maybe there is a possibility that when the paragraph is read in context, it may be that having said what he believed the reason was for his suspension in earlier paragraphs. It may be that he was saying, well, if what has been officially said as the reason why we were being suspended is true, then maybe blah, 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 blah. But I'm just saying, you know,
Yes.
but you must feel free to pursue. But Mr. Koko was answering and I interrupted him. Do you want to finish your answer?
Yes, I'm very clear before this paragraph in my affidavit on the reasons why I was suspended. And I'm also very clear that the version that I was suspended because there was an inquiry that was mooted on the 6th of March in the President Guest House that culminated in the meeting in Kandla on the 8th. That may well be true, and I will not quibble to it. And you will remember that Nick Linnell says it is him on the meeting of the 6th with Ms. Mieni who suggested that it is not possible to do an inquiry of this nature without getting the executive to step aside. That is the evidence of Nick Linnell. He also says...
just going on 1 second, because you mentioned that point even last time. If your team, Mr. Slega, or even Mr. Berry, if they are able to, if somebody is able to go to that part of Mr. Linnell's evidence where he says what Mr. Koko says, I would like to look at that, but not necessarily now.
Yes.
In due course. Continue, Mr.
Yeah, I'm certain that he said that. I'm 100% sure.
Can I get that, Mr. Koko? What he said?
In the meeting in the Presidential Guest House,
Yes.
where the President was supposed to attend but did not attend, and it ended...
In Pretoria.
Yes, it ended up being the meeting between Ms. Mieni
Yes,
and
yes, Mr. Linnell.
Mr. Linnell. When the discussions of the inquiry was mooted, Mr. Linnell says to Ms. Mieni, it's not possible to do an inquiry of this nature and still leave the executives in their offices. That's what Ms. Linnell says.
Yes, sorry. Chair, I can confirm that. Mr.
Yes.
Linnell says, in his view, the executive is responsible because of influential presence. He would advise that they be suspended to avoid them influencing their subordinates. So Mr. Linnell did.
Yes, okay,
Say-
yes.
The President allegedly did not pitch up, and they were directed to be at Nkandla, and they had...
No, not at Nkandla, at the Durban official residence of the President.
Yes.
Durban, yeah,
Yes, and then...
on the 8th.
Yes, and then he says, first there was a discussion around the need for the inquiry, and then there was a discussion about the areas that must be investigated. And at that point, the areas that must be investigated were three: generation, commercial, and the new build program. And then he says he did not know Eskom, and none of the people in the meeting knew Eskom. The names of the people to be suspended were later emailed to him later that evening. And the names were Mr. Matunda, Mr. Koko, Mr. Marukane. Now, I am not in a position to dispute
Yeah.
or agree with that. That may well be what I am putting to you, is that Mr. Tsotsi, who testified here and said he's always wanted an inquiry into Eskom, but he has not acted on it. When the opportunity arose through that process to throw my name in there. He did it. Otherwise, he would have been objective, and if he had been objective, my name would not stand against Generation. The real person who was managing Generation, at least at that point, for the short time, Mr. Ntsokolo would have been there, or his predecessor, who managed Generation for the last 7 years. And the only reason that Mr. Tsotsi, I think, and that's my thinking, he now and then, he did not mention Mr. Ntsokolo and Mr. Deva, is because he wanted to force my name at all costs, because he wanted to get rid of me because of how I responded to him with Mr. Sikasimbe.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Seleka.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Koko, I believe that you said you had been appointed into this position in October 2014, prior to you being suspended. Generation.
Just repeat what position so that it's clear.
The position from which he was suspended on 11th March 2015. Is it October 2014?
I was appointed to October 2014. I was appointed in the position, in the Generation position, in October 2014.
Yes.
No, I apologize. I was appointed the head of the GE, Technology and Commercial, October 2015, and then 12 months later, October 23, 2015, the head of Generation.
Okay, no, I think that's confusing.
Yes.
It seems to me the witness misspoke. When he referred to 2015, he intended to refer to 2014, and then he said a year later, in 2015.
I was
and maybe
appointed
we should
in
just
2015, October 23.
Yes, okay.
But it is on record, but
Yes.
he misspoke.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Let's just get it clear.
October.
Which position appointed from when, and which position appointed from when?
October 23, 2015, I was appointed the head of Generation.
2015.
2015.
Okay, all right. And then the other position?
October 2014, Technology and Generation, Technology and Commercial.
Okay, all right.
Oh, yes, so commercial.
So part of the point you make is that to the extent that at the Durban meeting on the 8th, only 3 areas were identified that were to be investigated. The area of which you were in charge was not one of them. Is that the point?
No, you are partly correct. You are partly correct. I was responsible at that point.
In March
In part,
2015.
in March, no. I was responsible during that meeting for commercial.
Yes.
Right. Now, the trick about commercial, it's quite elegant actually, and if you know Eskom, you're going to laugh at it. The reason they've put commercial there is because of the evidence again led by Nick Linnell, based on the letter, a very poorly written letter, by a gentleman that I've never met, called Jabu Maswanganye. Jabu Maswanganye says, the corruption in commercial is based on the diesel expenditure. And at that point, Eskom was burning R1 billion per month on diesel. Jabu Maswanganye, to create an excuse and a false narrative to get me suspended on commercial issues. He says, we have converted, and please listen to it again on the Mr. Linnell's affidavit. He says, we have converted the open cycle gas turbines in Ankrelech and Harikwa to base load. And because of that, then we are having this R1 billion expenditure. That can only come from a person who's mischievous because it's not factual, or who is clueless, he does not know. Because the only reason we're burning diesel of R1 billion a month is because the generation fleet was sitting at an energy availability factor at that time, and I'm telling you a number that is factual, of 69%. That is the only time when the government set up a war room, because the performance of Eskom at that time was at the lowest. It has since become the lowest now in 2020. And that was the only time, that was the time we had a Majuba coal silo collapse, and we lost 3,600 megawatts at Majuba. So at that point, given the 69% of the plant energy availability factor and the fact that we lost Majuba, we had no reason but to burn diesel to keep the lights on. It had nothing to do with corruption.
But you see, when you made the point that you made about when you became head of generation and when you were head of the other portfolio,
Yes.
I thought that the point you sought to make was that your portfolio that you occupied, which you were heading in March 2015, when this meeting in Durban took place, was not one of the portfolios that were, one of the three portfolios that were mentioned. And that maybe, that's where I thought you were going, that Mr. Tsotsi brought it in because of your issues with him. But from what you are saying, it looks like you accept that your portfolio which you were heading in March 2015 was one of the portfolios that were mentioned. Am I right?
Chairman, I think
It may be that you might say wrongly, it should not have been mentioned, but do you accept that factually it was mentioned, or that's not, you don't accept
Chairman,
that?
the affidavit of Mr. Nenel
Yeah.
first said there were reasons given for which areas were to be suspended.
Investigated.
He says there were reasons. The reason that they gave for commercial, which was my responsibility,
Yes.
were false.
Yes.
Were false, and
Yes.
it does not matter how you look at it.
Yes.
And-
No,
and my-
I understand that. I was simply saying I was on another point, which I thought you were pursuing. I was wanting just to have clarification that whether rightly or wrongly, your portfolio was one of the three that were mentioned. I think from what you are saying is they provided a wrong basis as far as you are concerned.
Correct.
For including it.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. And they made me to carry the monkey that did not belong to me.
Yes, Mr. Silega.
Chair, I'm moving on. Mr. Koko, in regard to that paragraph, you have assisted us with paragraph 114, where you say this was all a ruse. Mr. Tsotsi wanted to get rid of me because I suspended Mr. Malesela Sikasimbi and refused his unlawful instruction to make the misconduct case against against Malesela Sikasimbi to disappear. Refused his unlawful instruction to make the misconduct case against Mr. Malesela Sikasimbi to disappear. So I've contrasted that with what you said in that paragraph, where you say, remember, the board at the time was acting on instructions from government to get rid of me. So you are emphasizing this to be the reason in this paragraph 114, the ruse. So if this matter, which as we've gone through your testimony last time and looking at your affidavit, which made you angry, you went to Melrose Arch to get away from Mr. Tsotsi. You called Ms. Daniels to come to you at Melrose Arch to be assisted on what your legal rights are against this intended suspension. Why this issue of the misconduct of Mr. Sikasimbi was settled at 12 months at the CCMA.
Sorry,
Why was it
Let
settled?
me just hear the question. Why?
Why this burning issue of misconduct of Mr. Sikasimbi was settled at 12 months with him at the CCMA.
Oh, okay.
Right. Chair, this is quite an interesting point. So, Mr. Sikasimbi was dismissed, and I effected the dismissal.
Yes. There was a recommendation by an independent chairperson.
There was a recommendation by a senior counsel who says guilty dismissal.
You implemented that.
I implemented that. Then he went to CCMA. Ms. Daniels was handling that. And Mr. Daniels came to me and with IR and said, what's your strategy? I says, the guy must not come back. The guy must not come back, he's dismissed, that's it. Then, 2015, contrary to what many people think, Mr. Chair, and the board members came here and struggled very much to give you a picture of what was happening in Eskom in 2015. And I invite your investigators to go and check the minutes of the IFC of 26 February. It tells you the real picture of Eskom. It was a
IMC or
IFC.
The Investment and Finance
Investment
Committee.
and Finance. If there's any single document that tells you the position of Eskom, is those minutes. I think it's paragraph 5.
Yes.
It says.
You said it's February 2015?
February 2015.
Yeah.
The 26th of February.
Yeah, okay.
It says we are bankrupt. The government is not going to help us. The MIPD4 must be expedited. The load shedding in 2015 cost the economy, if you use CSI numbers, close to 85 billion rands in 2015. I said to Suzanne, go handle this. I support you. My focus is not to go to CCMA in courts. My focus is to stop the loss of 85 billion rands to the economy. My focus is to make sure that we stop the primary energy cost, and you will read it in there. Suzanne Daniels came to me. The hearing of Mr. Matshela took a very long, the internal hearing, it took extremely long. And I was very clear, and I told everybody I even went to, I think Mr. Molefe was the CEO. I said, Mr. Molefe, I am not spending time at the CCMA, given what the IFC says about the position of Eskom. My focus is to stop load shedding. My colleagues at Eskom will tell you, in 2015, when I took over generation, there were no even meetings. I cancelled all meetings. I cancelled all meetings. I cancelled all executive meetings. I says, our focus is to keep the lights on. We are load shedding. We are costing the economy over 80 billion rands a year. So, and that is the reason why Mr. Daniel came to discuss it with me and say, we want to settle this matter. I say, Suzanne, make it get away. But I don't want this person here. My focus is to keep the lights on.
Mr. Seleka.
Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Sikasimbi says, you see, the affidavit from him that he's puzzled that he would have been so important to cause the suspension of 4 top executives, and in fact, the loss of the jobs of 3 of those executives at a high cost to Eskom. Your comment?
Mr. Seleka, I'm not sure that we should be really going much into
I'm moving on, Chair.
the merits of whether Mr. Sekasimbe should or should not have been suspended or should not have been dismissed.
Yes. It's not the purpose, Chair.
So,
It's not the purpose.
Yeah.
The purpose is, again, testing Mr. Koko's validity of the reasons given for his suspension. I'm moving on, Chair.
yes, well, yeah, please, I think try and,
Yes.
yeah, because I don't want us to, because whether I think Mr. Sekasimbe should have been suspended or should not have been suspended or should have been dismissed or should not have been dismissed, I'm not sure that is something that
Yeah.
has much bearing on anything.
Yes. Chair, my question was, if you look at the totality of the evidence, that if Mr. Koko is correct, that his suspension is as a result of Mr. Tsotsi and Mr. Sekasimbe being suspended, Mr. Sekasimbe says, wow, then I was so important that I caused 4 executives to be suspended
I don't
and
see
3
the
of
point.
them to be
I don't
gotten
see-
rid of.
I don't see his point. Yeah. I mean, he may be quite interested in that because he was involved in that, but the commission is really looking at other issues. The only reason why his issue comes in is because Mr. Koko says, Mr. Tsotsi
That's right.
sought my suspension because of that.
Yes.
But Mr. Tsotsi hasn't said, because Mr. Koko unfairly suspended
Correct,
Mr.
Chair.
Kasimbe, I wanted him suspended. He has not, that's not his
Correct,
version.
Chair.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, I had said I will come back to the version of Mr. Tsolofelo Molefe, Mr. Koko. By the way, you testified about the Koko hunt last time in your appearance. Can you tell,
Well, I'm sorry. Can I ask this, Mr. Koko, following upon what you said earlier on in regard to Mr. Maswangai and in regard to Mr. Linnell? If
I had Mr. Nenel and
Mr. Linnell and Mr. Maswangai,
Mr. Masengwa.
yes. Based on what you are saying, Mr. Linnell's evidence was, which I think Mr. Selega confirms you are right, that he mentioned to Ms. Myeni at the Pretoria meeting something along the lines that he could not see how the investigation could be done without the heads of the particular portfolios being suspended, which included your portfolio. Number one, if at the Durban meeting, the person who gave certain reasons why your portfolio should be investigated was not Mr. Tsotsi, but Mr. Maswangai, don't those 2 points suggest that the inclusion of your portfolio among the portfolios to be investigated and the idea that you should be one of the 3 executives mentioned, or one of 3 executives whose portfolios were mentioned in Durban that should be suspended? Don't those points suggest that the idea that you should be suspended did not originate from Mr. Tsotsi?
Except that the audios of the 11th, it is Mr. Tsotsi who talks passionately about me.
That is the audios of the meeting?
11th of March meeting.
The Durban meeting or?
No.
Or the 11th of
The
March?
11th of March meeting.
Yes,
Except
okay.
that it is Mr. Tsotsi
Yes.
who is very passionate about it.
Yes. No. We can come to that. But do you accept that if you don't look at at what was discussed at the meeting of the 11th, if you just look at those 2 points you made, do you not accept that they seem to suggest that your inclusion or the inclusion of your portfolio among the portfolios to be investigated did not originate from you?
No, let me tell you why.
Yeah.
When Ms. Ninel tried to explain how he knew or how he met Mr. Maswanganye, he frequently said in this commission, I've met him at Zola Tsotsi's house. I was introduced.
Just repeat, at Mr. Zola Tsotsi's house. Yeah.
Yes. So I cannot rule out that it was a caucus position between him and Mr. Tsotsi.
Okay, but when you say that, when you say you cannot rule out, I understand that to mean I can't assert it as a fact, but I can't exclude it as a possibility that they conspired. Am I correct to understand you that way?
Chair, I am, and you might be unhappy with my answer, but I certainly...
No, I'm not happy. I just want to make sure that I understand you correctly.
I am certainly of the opinion that Mr. Tsotsi and Mr. Maswanganye conspired.
Yes, okay. But as you put it now, it might be, you base that more on what Mr. Tsotsi said on the 11th, plus what you have testified happened involving you, Mr. Madonna, and Mr.
Correct.
Tsotsi prior to the 11th.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, all right. Mr. Selega?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Mr. Koko, I had asked in regard to the testimony that the Koko hunt, when did that start, the Koko hunt?
Chair, you will need to give me a chance. This is very, very important. Very, very important to my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want an indication of when did it start?
It started December 2014.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
So what does it entail?
So Chair, the Koko hunt started with a matter that landed on your desk. That
Yes, but I'm asking, what does it entail?
I'm explaining that. I'm explaining that, Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Seleka has to give me a chance here. You
Yeah,
can't
no,
push
no.
me.
Yeah,
I will
I'm giving
talk.
you a chance,
I will
yes.
give my story.
Yeah.
We,
Well, you had just said it's a matter that
yes,
to me,
yes, because you
not aware
you
of the
commented, yeah,
matter.
so let me do that. So there was a project at Eskom, and there is still a project called the Kubach steam generator replacement. This steam generator replacement was delayed for quite some time. And before I was appointed. But I'm an engineer, and I understood the dynamics of having the Kubach steam generator replacement done. And quite frankly, the toing and froing with an asset like the steam generator was nonsensical. One. Two, there were serious issues with the project team that was running it. Just to summarize the story short, the Kubach steam generator, contrary to what many people do not understand, in my view, was the precursor to the nuclear build into the future. It was the single biggest nuclear project in the country, second to the big nuclear future. So we had to do it and do it properly. And I made sure that we do that. But the story of nuclear was politicized. Nuclear is President Zuma, and renewables is alleged to be Mr. Ramaphosa. So we had, and those dynamics played big time towards the ANC conference. But in my mind, I was clear, it is the right thing to do, and we will do it. And I will take no prisoners. Chair, I've never been attacked so much. I mean, the the document that served before the court was a similar conspiracy to what we're doing now. And the conspiracy was the board tender committee awarded the steam generator contract to Westinghouse. And overnight, Mr. Matshela and Mr. Koko changed the decision and awarded it to Arriva. And they went to, I think it was to the minister, and between the Minister Brown and Mr. Matshela and Mr. Koko, moved the decision from Westinghouse to Arriva. At that time, Mr. Chair, the story sounded believable. We could have had another commission of Kuberg steam generator. False, but I was the face of it. I took pain on that. Everybody, the newspapers criticized me left, right, and center because they argued that I'm anti-renewables and pro-nuclear. That's where the Koko hunt started. The culmination of the Koko hunt was in June 2016, when we were supposed to sign the renewable IPPs. Now, purely on the economics of Eskom, anybody who buys a product, and listen to me, Chair, anybody who buys a product for 83 rands, when he can make it for 83 cents, a unit for 83 cents, when he can make it for 40 cents, and then sell it for R2.25, is stupid and does not act in the interest of Eskom. It's happening today, and I repeat, it is stupid. Whether government is doing it, whether Eskom is doing it, it's stupid. You can make it for 40 cents, you buy it for 83 cents, you sell it for 25 cents. I objected to that. Till today, I am carrying the brand of it. That is the Koko hunt.
It is the Koko hunt.
Yes, and everybody takes that opportunity to say, this guy is corrupt, is pro-nuclear, is anti-renewables. If I have done something wrong, for as long as I mention his name, that's good. When the issue of Kuberg steam generator was raised in this commission, your response, which hurt me because you created an impression to the public that Mr. Koko is out of line, you said, but the merits were not discussed. I wrote the judgment, the merits were not discussed. What you did not tell them is that the contract, the person who came before the court was not the person who tendered. The person who came before the court did not have a local standing to court. That's what, when you said that you should have told the public, it hurt me, Chair, that here is a DCJ telling the public that I wrote the judgment. And Mr. Koko, if Mr. Koko has read the judgment, you did me wrong. But that's fine. That's a Koko hunt.
Okay. Well, the fact remains that that judgment was decided on local standing. That remains. It did not go into the merits. There was a minority judgment which went into the merits. So that part is factual.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Mr.
the minority
Senator,
judgment
yes,
of then Deputy Justice Musaneke
Yes.
ruled in my favor.
Yes.
And the South Africans must know
Yes.
that there was a minority judgment by
Yes.
Deputy Chief Justice Musaneke that said Koko was right. The word that he used, Deputy Justice Mr. Eskom, was meticulous.
Yes, but Mr. Koko, all judgments of the Constitutional Court are public. So that minority judgment is no. Mr. Slega?
I accept that, Chair.
Yes,
I've made my
yeah.
point.
Okay. Mr. Slega,
Chair,
continue.
yeah, let me try to expedite this. Mr. Koko, I'm going to run through the version of Ms. Molefe because that version is correct, as you have accepted. Now, the version is that on the 10th of March 2015, they are on the second day of the strategy session. Ms. Valetti tells her that you are calling her to come to Melville's Arch. And she didn't know, Ms. Veletti, while you were calling her and makes inquiries with Ms. Molefe. And Ms. Molefe said, well, don't go. If Mr. Koko calls you again, let him speak to me. That's on the 10th. On the same date, in the evening, Ms. Molefe, is called by Mr. Denmarukani. And Mr. Denmarukani tells her, let's meet. And they meet wherever they met. And he relates to her what he had been told by Ms. Suzanne Daniels, which is the meeting with you at Melrose Arch and Salim at Melrose Arch. So I'm just giving you that version. With that information, she goes to Mr. Matuna the next day, on the 11th of March. And that's when she says to Mr. Matuna, I hear that we are going to be suspended. Mr. Matuna says, I've heard rumors also that we are going to be suspended. Now, Mr. Matuna doesn't say to her, well, let's start with her first. She doesn't say to Mr. Matuna, I understand that you and Mr. Koko are going to be suspended. And for the Sumitomo reason. Nor does Mr. Matuna respond along those lines. So clearly her suspension, or what she had heard was the suspension, was in regard to the 4 executives, as told to her by Mr. Den Marukani, Mr. Marukani told by Ms. Suzanne Daniels. I want to take you to a paragraph in your affidavit on page 46, paragraph 156.
Chair, I need to comment about what he says, but
Yes.
I will answer his question. I need to answer his question, and I
Yes.
want to come back to
Chair,
the issues.
I can give him time to comment now.
Yes.
My counsel told me to keep quiet when the lead investigator speaks and ask for permission to comment.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Yeah, but I'm saying the version of Ms. Tsolofelo Molefe, which...
I am at page 46.
Yeah,
I am at page 46.
Page 46.
yeah, page 46, Chair. What I was saying to you, Mr. Koko, is that the version of Ms. Molefe, which you say is correct, you said it last time, that is the one as outlined there. And when she goes to Mr. Matuna saying, I understand we are going to be suspended, she's referring to the 4 executives. But I want to refer you to this paragraph. Paragraph 1...
Hang on.
Should I...
Before you referred him to the paragraph, he wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, Chair. I don't believe Ms. Molefe's affidavit or what Ms. Molefe was told, that I called Ms. Dlamini to come to Melrose Arch. That's false. I don't believe that because it's false. I've never called Ms. Dlamini, Ms. Nankulego Velegi, to come to Melrose Arch. I called her, I told her I'm at Melrose Arch. So the discussion between her, Ms. Molefe and Ms. Veletti, that I told Ms. Veletti to come to Melrose Arch, I don't believe it because it never happened. It's false.
Okay, now it's important that we understand exactly what you say.
Yes.
Ms. Dlamini testified that she is the one that told Ms. Molefe about the content of, about the fact that you had called her, to about the content of the discussion that she said happened between the two of you. So are you saying that to the extent that Ms. Dlamini conveyed this to Ms. Molefe, Ms. Dlamini is not being truthful or is mistaken, or are you simply saying, well, the fact that there was such a conversation between the two of them about this, I reject that whole conversation.
No. I can't reject the conversation.
Yes,
sir.
yeah, what are you saying?
I was not there
Yes,
when
yeah.
they talked, so I
Yes.
can't reject
Yes.
that there was a conversation between the two of them.
Yes.
What I am saying is that if Ms. Veleti Dlamini told Ms. Molefe that I call her to Melrose Arch, she's mistaken.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yes.
Yes.
I think you made the same point last time about.
Yes,
about
the part that I agree that with Ms. Molefe, and that is based purely on my interaction with Mr. Matuna, is when Mr. Matuna says he says he knew from outsiders. I think he owes you an explanation who the outsiders are, that they will be suspended. No. Yes, that's Ms. Molefe. So that makes sense because it occurs to the conversation that I've been having. The part that should interest all of us is that Mr. Matuna denies that. She says, I only learned about the suspensions of the four when I was suspended.
Okay, Mr. Selega, don't forget the point
Okay.
you were pursuing.
Yes,
please. Well, what do you say, Mr. Koko, with regard to your assertion that Ms. Dlamini was mistaken to say you had called her to a meeting at Melrose Arch? What do you say to this proposition that how come Ms. Dlamini tells Ms. Molefe something that is consistent with what Mr. Masango tells Ms. Cry about in regard to him, and tells Mr. Morokane about, and how come Ms. Dlamini is mistaken about something that's consistent with what, unbeknown to her, from what I understand the position, Ms. Daniels told somebody, I don't know whether it was Mr.
Marokane, yes.
Marokane, about on the same day. So what you have is, so Ms. Daniels says on the 10th, tells Mr. Morokane on the 10th of March 2015, Mr. Koko called me to a meeting at Melrose Arch, where I met him and Mr. Salim Essa, or maybe it doesn't go to the details of Salim Essa, but he called me to a meeting in Melrose Arch where I heard that 4 executives are going to be suspended. Mr. Abraham Masango also testifies and says, on the same day, I got a call from Mr. Koko as well. And he called me to Melrose Arch. And there, in that meeting, I was told that 4 executives would be suspended. All of these people, as I understand the position, are acting independently of one another. Ms. Cry says, indeed, that's what Mr. Abraham told me, either it's the same day or the following day, reported to me. Mr. Dan Morokane also says, I don't know if it was a week or whatever, later or 2 weeks. That's what Mr. Abraham Masango told me as well.
On the 14th.
On the, okay, so
Saturday.
So what do you say to the proposition that it looks very strange that Ms. Morokane, that you spoke to her and you were at Melrose Arch on that day. You admit that you spoke to her, you called her, you admit you were at Melrose Arch, but you are saying that in terms of the content of the conversation, she's mistaken about you having said she must come to a meeting at Melrose Arch. But it so happens that there are these two other people who independently tell other people that same things, same calls were made to them and same discussion happened. What do you say about that?
Chairman, you are not correct to suggest that Ms. Daniels and Mr. Masango are acting independently, and I'll come back to that.
Yes, no, you must tell me. I'm just saying from what I've heard, I've not heard that they are.
So I'm coming to that. I'm saying.
Yeah, you must come to that. Yeah.
You are not correct. I called Ms. Lamini. It's a fact. I told her I was at Melrose Arch. I actually thought she's at Megwat Park. And what she did not tell you, because we were very close, before I knew that she was at the college, I was harassing her to find out what's going on the corridors at Megwat Park, because that was the day I was supposed to be suspended.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you to repeat that. I don't think I heard.
I'm saying what she did not tell you about our conversation when I called her and I told her that I'm at Megwat Park, and I told her why I was at Megwat Park. I told her I ran out of the office. I did not want to...
Oh, you mean you told her you were at Melrose Arch?
I told her at Melrose Arch.
Yeah.
I ran out of Megwat Park because Mr. Tsotsi has a permanent office at Megwat Park. He interacted, and I did not want to come across him. But I believe that he was going to suspend us on that day. And Ms. Veleti Lamini was quite senior. And I said, just find out for me what's going on in the corridor stock. When I don't know whether I phoned him first, her first, or Ms. Masango first. But I also phoned Mr. Masango.
Yes, yes.
So at no stage that I told her I'm at Megwat Park, come. But here is a clue for your answer.
No stage.
At no stage did I tell her to come to say
Melrose
come to Megwat Park. I told her my sorry.
Okay, you keep on saying Megwat Park.
I apologize.
Melrose Arch.
I apologize, and I think you are right, Chair. Here is a clue to your answer. Ms. Veleti, and this makes me not to sleep, because I'm wondering why would she do that. She says in her affidavit, in the afternoon when we met at Midrand, and remember the meeting of Midrand, I told you, she didn't tell you, she was asked to comment on it. She said, Mr. Koko told me that she will be suspended with other executives. And she writes it in black and white. She did not tell me who else was going to be suspended. When she come here to sit here and she looks at you and you asked her, did Mr. Koko tell you that the CFO will be suspended? She says yes. That's unlike her, and it's irrational. Her affidavit is very clear that I did not tell her. She comes here, she says, I told her. I cannot explain why, other than to say she came here, she looks at the trend, she thinks that that's what you want to hear. If you go to Ms. Daniels, based on the suspension letters, the 4 suspension letters that were shown to you by Mr. Koza and Ms. Daniels, that were written by her on the 10th in the evening.
That is now Ms. Daniels.
Ms. Daniels, written by her and edited by Mr. Salim Issa. When in her version, she was not asked to assist either me or Ms. Issa to write suspension letters. That is a classical example of if you needed evidence that Ms. Daniels was in contact with Mr. Issa on that day, it is those 4 letters. The source of the information to Mr. Marokani, to Ms. Molefe is the same person who, based on the evidence here, met Mr. Issa in the, at least at 7 o'clock. That's the issue for me. She had contact with Mr. Issa based on the suspension letters. They both, Mr. Masango and Mr. Matun and Ms. Daniels, go to Parliament and they say, we work together to get rid of Mr. Koko. So they did not act independently. Mr. Masango's story, Chairman, is a concoction created after March 2017, after I've dealt with him and Ms. Cry. Ms. Cry and Mr. Masango Makelwan created this story after I issued an instruction that they must be investigated.
Yes. Now, of course, we dealt previously, I think, with the question that as at the 10th and 11th of March 2015, you were still close to Ms. Daniels, you were still close to Mr. Masango. So, with regard to Mr. Dan Morokane saying, yes, Mr. Masango did tell me.
But Mr. Morokane does not say that, Chair.
Hang on 1 second. We'll need to check. I'm under the impression that he does, but we'll need to check. To the extent that he confirms that Mr. Masango did tell him during 2016, then we would need to look at why he would say that. Mr. Selega, is my recollection incorrect?
Chair, I listened to the testimony that was put to Mr. Masango by Mr. Selega, that Mr. Morokane denies what Mr. Masango says.
Okay, Mr. Selega?
Chair,
Maybe I'm mistaken.
Well, Mr. Masango did answer my question saying, he answered it in the affirmative that he told Mr. Den Morokane, but I did put to him that Mr. Den Morokane didn't confirm that. And
did he confirm that he was told by Ms. Daniels?
no, that one is confirmed, yes.
He confirmed that.
That one is confirmed.
What he didn't, but was he asked about Masango's version, that is Mr. Den Morokane?
I did provide him with Mr. Masango's
Yes.
affidavit.
Okay.
And specifically
but he
asked him.
confirmed the one relating to
Correct.
Ms. Daniels.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think maybe what I would want you to comment on, let's limit it to Ms. Daniels and Mr. Morokane. Would you have a reason why Mr. Morokane would confirm that Ms. Daniels told her something on the 10th of March if she actually didn't tell her that?
Sir,
Would that be a reason?
Chair, you said we were close with Ms. Daniels.
Yes.
We had a very good professional relationship, that's correct.
Yes.
But she didn't tell me that she met Mr. Issa and wrote the suspension letters against the four of us, and it was edited by Mr. Issa. She did not. Well, I can't explain that.
Okay.
I just can't explain her behavior. That here is a person on evidence before us, met Mr. Issa, wrote the suspension letters, Mr. Issa edited the suspension letters, and then she goes to Mr. Morokane and say, Mr. Koko took me to Mr. Issa, and the four of you are going to be suspended. I just can't explain that type of behavior.
Okay, no, that's fine. Continue, Mr. Selega.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify on Ms. Veleti, Chairperson, when she testified, the transcript shows, now she's telling, before we ask her questions, and he indicated that I might be, referring to Mr. Koko, I might be asked to act in that role, because there was, not in those words, there was chance that the FD was also in the list of suspensions. So, but then it's incumbent on us to get clarity from her. So she says, not in those words. She said there's a chance the FD was also on the list of suspensions.
And Chair, there's a
So can I
I
just
Let
finish?
him finish, yeah.
I apologize.
So then we would have asked questions to clarify, and she would have answered, which is what Mr. Koko is referring to.
Yes.
And that's what the evidence is, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Koko, you wanted to say something?
You know, I don't think that I was understood why in my discussion, in my dinner discussion in Midrand, which Ms. Valetti says was 20 minutes and it was not. And when we were discussing and she says, so if you are going to be suspended, because I was very clear, I said me and Mr. Matona are going to be suspended. I didn't talk about other people. Who will most likely end? I said, I don't know. You may probably act. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that.
Sorry, Chair, but that's...
Yes, let him finish, let him
Yeah,
finish.
okay.
Let Mr. Koko finish.
And there was a reason for that. And the reason for that is because if you look at the Eskom organizational structure, the most senior person at the time in commercial, remember, was head of commercial. It was her. She had set up what we call shared services. All the transactional activities on finance and commercial were centralized into one, and she set it up, and she did so well to it, and she became executive of the year. So if you look at the succession planning, and you say who are the 2 or 3 or 4 people who will step into the position of a chief procurement officer, you'll be naive if you don't mention her.
Yes, Mr. Selega.
Chair, thank you. Let me put it this way, Mr. Koko. You see, your explanation for your suspension, it doesn't explain why these executives who are 4, who we understand in 2 different meetings before the 11th, they get suspended, are talked about, that including yourself, and they get suspended on the 11th, just as it is said to have been discussed at the Melrose Arch meeting. Your version doesn't explain that. That's one. Let me add the other one. It doesn't explain why the minister comes there on the 11th and the other board members have said, he speaks in support of what Mr. Tsotsi had said on the 9th. Identifies 4 areas of her concern, and she says these 4 executives should step aside. I'll add the 3rd one. It doesn't explain why the executives who were appointed to act, they say you told them they will act, at least there's 2. But I told you also about Mr. Edwin Mabelane that you said to him, this meeting you are being called to the chairperson, it's maybe about you going to act because we're going to be suspended, but you didn't tell him who's going to be suspended. He walks away from your office under the impression that he's going to act in your position. And all 3 of them get appointed, just as they say you suggested to them. Your version that doesn't explain that, so how does the chairperson deal with it?
Chairman, I cannot carry the monkey of a Melrose Ash meeting with Salim Essa. It did not happen. I did not know Salim Essa in 2015. I've put it to you. Go check my telephone records. Go employ whatever intelligence you can employ. You will not find my contact with Mr. Essa either telephonically or on the emails. Ms. Daniels met Ms. Issa on the 10th. The evidence shows that before you. So I cannot carry that monkey. I did not have a discussion with Mr. Essa and Ms. Daniels about the suspensions. I did not meet Mr. Masango at Melrose Arch. I phoned him during the day. He was in a meeting. I sat on the 3rd. I phoned him in the afternoon towards 5 o'clock. I was driving to go and meet Ms. Lamini. He asked me, he will come to where I am. I said, no, we are neighbors, so I know where he lives. Don't come to Joburg. But I told him exactly what I was going through. I did not tell Mr. Mabilani that he's going to act. I have not seen his affidavit. I am looking forward to it. I explain to the commission why I think I was suspended. And I'm convinced why I was suspended. I cannot explain what Minister Brown did. I can't explain it, but I can tell you why I think I was suspended.
Yes, okay.
It also doesn't explain your version. Why? The coincidence. Is it a coincidence or what? That Mr. Masango says, he told me, Mr. Koko, 4 executives are going to be suspended, but I will come back, and the other 3 will not. And exactly that happens.
Chair, once again, if you want a witness that has said too many things that don't tie up, it's Mr. Masango. And you go with his version at your own risk. What I can tell you is that the story that the board was in a conspiracy with me to take me out and bring me back, they had the opportunity to leave me there. It just does not make sense. This story of a conspiracy that brings me back is just, as a minimum, just ridiculous.
Yeah. It doesn't explain, Mr. Koko, which is what Ms. Daniels was told, that there will be an inquiry by an independent firm. And what happens is this. Mr. Linnell, who was embraced by the board to be the coordinator, he had suggested a different inquiry in mind. One to be headed by a judge, and to appoint a law firm and an auditing firm. What happens? The audit and risk, which was headed by Ms. Mabude, declines that terms of reference. And the board goes out of its way to appoint one independent, I suppose, law firm, Denton's, to conduct the investigation. Exactly as she was told at Melrose Arch.
Chair, once again, when you asked Ms. Daniels that when she said to you, Mr. Issa told me that 4 executives will be suspended and they will not come back. And you asked her, but why didn't you say so? She could not give you a decent answer. I don't think you got a decent answer. I cannot speak for the audit and risk. I don't know how Denton was appointed. I just know how I dealt with them. They interviewed me many times. I can't talk for the board. They must come here and speak for themselves.
Yes. Chair, as to the 4 executives and 1 returning, we know that from Mr. Masango. That's from his side. And it doesn't explain the genesis of all these meetings, the meetings at the president's, but you said you can't dispute that because you were not there. It puzzles the mind that if a statement could be said prior to the 11th of March and prior to these executives, the 3 being gotten rid of, that they will be gotten rid of. And the witness says, I heard it from Mr. Koko. And you see the board is at pains to negotiate, to exit them and pay them huge amounts of money as hush money to go away. That, as I said here previously, that is either a coincidence or it's an orchestration. Your comment, which on the face of it, it seems, if you look at this witness evidence, you would have been part of or behind it.
If ever there was an orchestration, I was never part of it.
Mr. Selega?
Shall I ask the last question, Chair?
Well, I'm not saying ask the last question. I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. All have the same idea of how much time you still need. We are at 28 minutes to 7. what's your assessment of how much more time?
I ask a question in a minute, Chair. I ask a question in less than a minute. I can't control the answer, how long it's going to be.
Yes.
But let me see, I can simplify the questions. And
Mr. Chairman, I've actually got a problem with what has just been stated to you.
Sorry?
I actually have a problem with what my learned friend has just put to you, because what it really amounts to
Yes.
is intimidation of the witness.
No,
because what he's saying to you, and he's suggesting that you and him are on the same
didn't
side.
take it seriously.
May I speak, sir? May I speak, sir?
Yeah.
So he's indirectly trying to limit the witness's answers. That's what he's doing. And that is not fair, sir, and you should not allow it. And it's not a joke.
No.
It's not a joke, sir.
No. What? No, I don't, I don't think he meant it seriously. Look, the position is...
This is my very point. He hides behind supposed humor,
Yeah,
but that's not what's happening here, sir.
No. Let's talk about what your...
time estimation.
What your assessment is of the time you need.
I think we could be less than 10 minutes, Chair.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yes.
I just wanted to have an idea so that we all know.
Yes.
It might be a little more or one or
Yes.
less, but just wanted an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Chair,
let's
my
continue.
sincere apologies, I can do with a comfort break.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's take 10 minutes.
No, 5 minutes.
5 minutes
5
would do.
minutes. 5 minutes.
But walking to where you might walk and
I will
coming
run
back.
quickly.
Yeah, okay. Let's take a 5 minutes break then.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
Bullet, may I have that affidavit?
Never gave Dentons the mandate to investigate any misconduct against any of the suspended executives. Your comment?
Chair, I think that the board must be ashamed of themselves from day one because their suspensions were not warranted, including mine. They must be ashamed. I told them in the minutes of the 11th, it's very clear. I went into great extent, they even had to send me outside for a cool-off. You know, like a rugby player who's being out of order. They had to say I had to stay outside for close to 40 minutes because I just did not agree with them. They were not making sense. So I was not surprised. And when I met them, I told them, when they gave me a settlement, I did not even look at it. I told them, my blood is blue. I did nothing wrong. Charge me if I've done something wrong. So I was not surprised.
Yes, then I had referred you to page 46 of your affidavit, paragraph 157. 46, 157.
Well, on my bundle, there isn't 157 at page 46, there is 167.
Eskom bundle 15, Chairperson. Sorry.
That's the one. You said page...
Page 46.
Oh, no, I'm terribly sorry. This is page 46 of the affidavit, not the paginated
okay.
46.
Oh, okay.
So you mean the paginated
The paginated,
46.
yes.
No, that's fine, that's fine. Yes, okay, I am there.
Yes. There's a paragraph there's a paragraph there, Mr. Koko, paragraph 146, and I think you're specifically dealing with paragraph 27 of Mr. Tsolofelo Molefe's affidavit. You say, I don't believe what Mr. Molefe deposed to in paragraph 27 of her affidavit regarding what others had told her. And then you go on to say, I again suspect that she has been recognized by the Zondo investigation team. Now, Chair, it's important we look at paragraph 27 of Ms. Molefe's affidavit. Or I can...
What bundle?
Eskom bundle 11. Please assist Mr. Koko. Eskom bundle 11, page 15. Page 15. Paragraph 27, Chair, is at the bottom of the page.
I've got paragraph 27.
Thank you, Chair. The paragraph reads, my suspension, though difficult to believe and understand, did not come as a surprise. A day before my suspension, the Senior General Manager for Shared Services, Ms. Nonkululeko Dlamini, aka Valetti, came to me in panic and informed me that Mr. Matshela Koko called her and requested that she go to Melrose Arch to meet some people. At the time, we agreed that she would not go, and if Koko called her again, she would refer him to me. Later on the same day, Mr. Dan Marokane Group Executive Group Capital Division informed me that he had heard from Ms. Suzanne Daniels, executive in the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer, that he, Koko, Matuna, and I would be suspended the following day, 11 March, at the board meeting. Before the board meeting commenced at 9 a.m., I went to see Matuna in his office, and he also informed me that he had heard from outside sources that we were going to be suspended at the board meeting later that day. And Chair, you could also read paragraph 28, which is of interest, but let me deal with 27. Because paragraph 28, it says, while we were waiting to be called, I also received a call from one of the general managers, I can't remember which one, asking me if it was true that we were being suspended. I received information from reliable sources that at ESSA's behest, 4 of the general managers were called to his offices in Melrose Arch. These general managers were informed of the suspensions that would take place the following day and that they should be ready to act in our stead. But Mr. Koko, I want to focus now on what you singled out in your affidavit, which is paragraph 27, about which you say you don't believe what she's deposing in paragraph 27. And you go on to say, I again suspect that she has been recognized by the Zondo investigation team. Can you explain what are you saying?
Chair, I caused the letter that my attorney sent you because I do believe, you may disagree with me and I could be wrong, it's okay. I do believe that your investigators are chasing people, not the evidence.
What?
Are chasing people and not the evidence. And I do believe that they coach certain witnesses. I could be wrong. But some of the things that I read in this evidence, based on what I know, I get shocked. So it's something that I can say only in this place. And if I'm wrong, I will take it. Yeah. But that's my belief, and I have to say it. Mm-hmm. And That last sentence points to that. But let's go to to what I'm saying about Ms. Moleka. We talked about it. I cannot dispute the conversation between Ms. Molefe and Ms. Lamini. I was not there, Kwasnidani. But the contents are not true. The contents are simply not true.
Now, let's go to page 37 in the same bundle, Mr. Koko. Eskom bundle 11.
Eskom bundle 11.
Yeah, the same one where Ms. Molefe's affidavit is found. Page 37, Chair.
Of the same,
Of the same bundle. Eskom bundle 11,
yes.
where we are reading
Page 37.
page 37.
Before we go there, I just want to ask, Ms. Molefe says that, hang on, let me say what I want to say first, then I'll give you a chance. Ms. Molefe says at paragraph 28 of her affidavit that she received information from reliable sources, or that she says that 4 of the general managers were called to Mr. Essa's offices in Melrose Arch, and that there they were informed of the suspensions that would take place the following day, and that they should be ready to act now. Has somebody investigated this part, talked to those general managers, got more information?
Chair, what I understand investigators have found in regard to that paragraph is, to the extent they could, is there's 3 executives or managers who acted on the 12th. Mr. Zitembe Koza has denied having a prior meeting. He was here. He only went even though the meeting of the 19th showed that he had a meeting with those people who were to act. So he's denied that part. You recall in the minutes?
Yes, but all I want to find out is whether this has been pursued to check with Ms. Molefe who those managers were and to talk to them to find out whether there is any truth that they were called to
We
Melrose
have,
Arch.
yeah, checking was done with a chairperson.
Yes, okay, you will at some stage draw my attention to where I must check if there is material here arising out of that investigation.
Yeah, as she says, she says reliable sources, Chair.
Yes, yeah.
So,
But she should be able to, she should be able to say.
to substantiate it.
If she can't tell you what who the reliable sources were,
Yes.
at least she should be able to tell you whether the 4 general managers are the people who ultimately acted or it's different people, and they should be asked whether they were called to such a meeting.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Mr. Berry,
Chair,
you wanted
Chair,
to...
it's much more than that.
Sorry?
It's much more than that.
Yes.
We are interested in the telephone records because we want to know
Yes.
who was Ms. Molefe talking to, who reliably told you that,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
what was the discussions about. And that's a discussion, that's the telephone records that my counsel has been asking.
Yeah. Mr. Berry, you wanted to say something?
Chair, at the conclusion of the previous hearing, in the absence of my learned friend, because he was in conference with you after the hearing, you will recall, I had a conversation with Ms. Jagannath and with Ms. Jagannath,
Yeah.
my learned friend's junior.
Okay.
And the reason for that conversation was that Mr. Koko was, during the testimony on the 3rd of December, confronted with bundles that we don't have and that he wasn't supplied with beforehand, that leaves us in an embarrassing situation. And the arrangement was, and we referred to the files that were behind Mr. Koko and said we would like to have them. At that time, I insisted I wanted in hard copy, but the next day, on the 4th of December, we wrote a letter and we said, no, forget about the hard copy. We're quite happy to have it in electronic copy. So what we then subsequently received were bundles 12, 13, 15, and 18. But the arrangement was that the bundles that are going to be referred to before you during the examination of my client would be made available to us. Now, suddenly, there's bundle 11 that's being referred. I see there are 7 bundles there at the business. We're not supplied with these. And it is a simple matter of giving us a link to an electronic site. Then we can know what's going on before, and Mr. Koko can acquaint himself with the issue of the bundle. So we're upset about it.
Ms. Tesselaka, what do you say to that point?
Chair, the bundles, as my learned friend says, some of them were given to him. The request for hard copies, I was not aware of it, but I'm not sure whether the Commission...
But he says that they changed that. He says they ultimately said electronic is fine. But his complaint is that you are now referring to a bundle that has not been provided to them. That's his complaint.
Oh yes, I've just provided my learned friend with it. Last time...
Obviously, he's saying should have been provided earlier. That's what he's complaining about.
No, I understand, Chair.
Yes.
And he's complaining about last time. Last time, we only referred to Mr. Koko's bundle.
No, he's complaining about now. He says you are referring to bundle 11. He says bundle 11 is not among the bundles that you made available to him before.
No, that's correct, Chairperson. It wasn't made available to them before. The bundles which we use, we determined that during the course of our preparation. So I decided today, during the course of the day, that I will seek to rely or refer to not bundle, but the affidavit of Ms. Molefe. So we didn't provide it to them last week, during the course of the week.
Well, but
the affidavit would have been provided to them.
The principle that he's talking about is there's an agreement, at least they made the point, and they thought you had accepted the principle that they should be provided in advance with the bundles that will be used in questioning their client.
That's right.
And he's saying the use of bundle 11 now to question his client when bundle 11 has not previously been given to them is unfair to them. That's the point he's making.
Yes. No, Chair, I accept that. We would have shared the affidavit of Ms. Molefe only with them.
Sorry, your voice is low again.
The affidavit, but is that correct? Because when they are sent, my understanding is when they are sent a Rule 3.3 notice about a particular witness, Chair, they are provided currently with a password that gives them a link to the documentation that goes with that. So I'll have to...
but he says you may have given that at some stage, or the Commission might have done that at some stage, but there comes a time when you inform him or you give them notice, we are going to use the following bundles to question your client.
Yes.
So even if that affidavit may have been given to them at the stage of the 3.3 notices, if you don't include it in your list when you say, these are the ones we are going to use on that day, it's unfair that you now use it without them having had a chance to look at them. It seems like a fair point to me.
Yes, it is a fair point, Chair. Yes. I'm not sure...
Well, if it's a fair point, it seems to me you You shouldn't question Mr. Koko using a bundle that they have not had a look at them unless they say, look, okay, it's fine, go ahead for purposes of finishing, you know.
Chair, may I explain? I know.
Yeah,
I
okay,
know,
let me explain.
I know I say it's a fair point. But it has to be assessed in the context of what parties get provided with in terms of Rule 3.3. So the bundles are available to them electronically, so they will always have them.
Yes, but you
Yes.
remember I said the point is, you might, I might have 100 affidavits that you have given me in terms of 3.3 notices. But closer to the date when my client is going to be questioned, you give me notice that you are only going to use 10 out of those 100 affidavits. And then when I'm at the hearing, having prepared only on the basis of the 10 affidavits, you then go back and use another affidavit that I've had no notice about. That's the point. So I might have that, but I didn't bring that because you didn't include it as one of the material you were going to use.
Yes, that's the point I was making, because we provide with electronic versions.
Yes, but
So it's not hard copies, Chair.
may I just be heard?
Like you and I.
Okay, I'm not sure that.
May, may I
hear
just
Mr.
be heard
Berry.
on this point? We are not provided with electronic access to all the bundles. These were the only bundles that we received electronically.
Yeah.
I have, if my learned friend wants to ask questions about this bundle, Mr. Koko will be able to deal with it, I'm sure. So that's fine.
Yes.
For this limited purpose that
yeah,
you refer
yeah.
to this bundle.
But for
we
the
are going
future.
we are going to come back,
Yeah.
and we would then really like
Yeah.
to be put in possession of the
No.
bundles electronically.
Yeah.
In any old way, use
Yeah.
homing pigeon.
Yeah.
But we don't like to have.
No, that's all right.
Yes.
Okay, so I think Mr. Berry says, okay, for purposes of today, that's
Yes, Chair.
fine, but for the future, please give them
Give them the bundles.
all the material that you'll use, yeah. Okay, all right.
Yes, sir. Then page 37 of Eskom Bundle 11. 37, Eskom Bundle 11. Chair, this,
We are at 7 o'clock. I think we should try and wrap up if we can.
yes, Chair.
37. Yes, continue.
Chair, this is a transcript of Ms. Molefe's testament at the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. You will see that this transcript is dated 8 November 2017. The starting page is page 20, Chairperson. And now,
Just say that again.
the starting page of the transcript is page 20.
Okay.
But the portion I want to read is on page 37. Against
No,
Ms.
I'm not sure. I think you are confusing me.
Oh.
You said page 37 and I went there. Then you said page 20.
Oh, what I'm explaining is the transcript, Chairperson, starts on page 20. But,
Okay.
yes.
Paginated page 20.
Paginated page 20.
Yeah.
The passage I want to read from is on page 37.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
there.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's against Ms. Molefe's name, Chairperson. You got the first two names, Honorable Mazoni, and then Ms. L. Is that Mganga?
Yeah, just, you can skip that.
That's right, let me skip that.
Yeah.
Then there's Ms. Solofelo Molefe. And there, Chair, the paragraph, well, let me just read it quickly. Says, thank you, Chair. If I can address the issue of my suspension, I think Dr. Luyenge also had asked a question on which I just realized that I did not respond to. You know, it's really a difficult one because to a large extent, I would be speculating, but the issues around our suspension did not. And out on the day that the same meeting took place. I had been informed by people, you know, from various areas that their are news out there that we are going to be suspended because we are not playing ball or we don't understand the mandate. And when I looked at why would be suspended, what have I done? I knew exactly that I had said no, to which I think would lead to my suspension. In fact, I had heard, I think a couple of days before our suspension, I was, then the words are not fully typed out, there's a board meeting coming and you would be suspended on that board meeting. Because it was a rumor, I did not have factual evidence to it, so I really ignored it. But this is the part, Chair, I want. She says, but what I remember vividly happening on the day before the suspension, I had a strategic session with my team. And one of my direct reports, Nonkululeko Veleti, there they type Vele, came to me in panic saying he's just received a call from Mr. Matshela Koko saying that she must come to Melrose Arch, and she asked me, why don't I? Why don't I go? Why must she go there? And I said, I have no idea what's
Sorry, Mr. Selega, I've quickly gone through
Have you
the
gone through it,
passage.
Chair?
I'm not sure what is different in that passage.
Correct, Chair.
She says from what we have read in her
Yes,
affidavit.
thank you, Chair. If the Chair's gone through it, Mr. Koko, I can see he's anticipating my question. Mr. Koko, this testimony, which is exactly the same as in that paragraph 27 of her affidavit, was given on the 8th of November 2017. You know that exactly, isn't it?
I beg your pardon?
Do you know that exactly, isn't it?
Do I know what?
That she gave this testimony on the 8th of November 2017.
That's correct, Chair.
And at that time, this commission had not been established.
That's correct, Chair.
So this commission, or the team of the investigators, could not have done what you allege in your affidavit in the paragraph I've read. What paragraph? 157.
The point that
What's your question?
is being made, Mr. Koko, by Mr. Selega is that you said that was it in regard to Ms. Molefe or Ms.
Molefe.
Ms. Molefe, she gave, in reaction to her version, you said, well, you think she must have been recognized by the investigators of this commission. I think Mr. Selega is saying, but here, before this commission was established, she was giving the same version. So how come you say she's giving this version because she has been recognized?
Chair, here is the point. And it's not a single event. There's a trend. There's a trend that starts with the parliamentary inquiry on Eskom, on state capture. And the only difference between here and in Parliament is, I think we've got a better chair here that asks difficult questions. But the tendency of investigators to read the newspapers and then come and just follow that line is what I'm all about. Instead of saying, we heard you, but where is the evidence? Where are the people you say called you? Let's interview those people. You're saying 4 people have met with the chairman. Where are those 4 people? Let's interview those 4 people. Nobody's telling me about that. And that is the point I'm making.
So are you then suggesting now that she gave that version in Parliament because somebody, whether they were investigators or whatever, that may have dealt with her, also recognized her.
I'm saying exactly that, Chair.
So the investigators of this commission and whoever may have been involved in regard to her parliamentary appearance
I am
also did the same.
I am saying exactly that. If I have to be blunt about it, it's the same WhatsApp group.
Okay, all right. Mr. Salaga.
Chair, I think the documentation speak for themselves, and I have no further questions.
Okay, all right. Mr. Berry, it may well be that you would want to re-examine at the end of everything, or did you have some re-examination for this evening?
Chair, it's a matter of time. The re-examination will take a substantial period of time, but what I do want to do is, because the issues that have been debated with the witness here today have all been dealt with
Yes,
in the affidavit
Yes.
That was
handed up.
well, it has not yet been handed up.
Oh.
That's the real point I want to make.
Okay.
So his more comprehensive responses to
Yes.
this whole issue
Yeah,
are contained in here, and the original of this has apparently been taken by the person on the commission staff who prepares the bundles,
yes.
and but these have already been given page numbers in
Yeah.
bundle 15. So on that basis, if I may hand up to you
Yeah,
a
okay.
copy of the signed affidavit.
Okay,
Shortly, the accompanying bundle, which is going to be, it's a substantial bundle,
Yeah.
will be made available electronically
okay,
to the secretariat.
yes.
But the issue here is that the matters that have been raised are dealt with in this affidavit in great detail.
Yeah,
And you will find that from paragraph 51 on page 18 of the affidavit itself. I see it hasn't been numbered in accordance with bundle 15.
yes,
But we would urge you, Mr. Chairman, that you should have regard to what's in this affidavit in this regard. Similar matters have been dealt with in the original affidavit. But in the meantime, what has happened is that the evidence has come available that on the 10th of March, Ms. Daniels was party to a document that was exchanged with Mr. Salim Essa. That is of very crucial importance to where the truth lies. I would also point out that the passage that was referred to in Ms. Malefe's evidence before the Parliamentary Commission makes for interesting reading, and it does not accord, but that is for you to look into, with what was said to this commission. What she did report at that stage is apparently that Ms. Belletti came to her and said, Mr. Koko wants her to come to Melrose Arch, and that was all. And that she then later learned the following day that the 4 people who were going to act in the positions of the suspended people had all been called to Melrose Arch. Now, what has happened about that version of events, we have no idea. But we just want to point out that it's inevitable that over passage of time, conflicts are going to start, people start, and you are fully experienced that. People actually start believing what is imprinted in their minds, and it makes the fact finder or the trier of facts version very difficult. But
Yeah.
the point that we are making is there are, of course, avenues which can be followed to track the movements of people. The cell phone companies know where calls are received and where they are made from.
Yeah,
because they know which towers have been activated.
yeah,
So if somebody says, I was at Melrose Arch, but it then appears he was on his way to Witbank,
yeah,
you can know about that. That evidence is available, provided, of course, that you ask for it.
yeah,
And so that is the issue, is eventually one looks for concrete evidence, evidence that cannot be controverted by the mere say-so of witnesses. But we make the point that we have dealt with these issues
Yes.
comprehensively in this affidavit, and we now place it before you
yeah.
so that it, I would imagine, becomes available for public consumption as well.
Well, I assume you have given one to,
As I say,
or
I'm
you
not-
say the commission already has?
No, it was given
Yes,
before we
yes, my last
started.
friend has it, and the original has gone off to be copied.
Okay,
But the
no,
point
that's
that I'm
fine.
making is that it's going to take time, the re-examination, because we will take you through this affidavit.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's
And so that is going to take some time.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you, sir.
thank you.
And thank you for hearing us today.
Okay, no, that's all right. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Koko. Thank you, Mr. Berry. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Slegger and your team and the staff. We are going to adjourn now. This is the last hearing of the commission this year. The next hearing will be next year in January, and the date will be announced. We adjourn.
Thank you, Chair.
All right.
Version and the version of the affidavit of the Zondo Commission are not the same. Yeah, it's not the same version.